Okay, Shalom Aleichem, everybody. A friend of mine would wish the Rebbe every Motzei Shabbos. The Rebbe was leaving 770. He would wish the Rebbe a good vach. One week, Motzei Shabbos was Yutas Kislev. So instead of, okay, 1 second. So he says to the Rebbe a good vach. The Rebbe looks him in the eye, and the Rebbe says a good yantiv. A good yantiv. That's why I felt this year, Aleph Nissan falls out on Motzei Shabbos. It's a good vach, take, but not just a good vach. It's really a yantiv. It's really a day of bracha and mazel for each of us and for all the Jewish people. And I want to begin and Yunis Neril Ben Chana, Yisr Yitzchak Sophia, Refuah Kreva Shlema. Let's just say a few psukim of the Rebbe's kapitel. Kapitel Kuf Yutes. Ashes Midorech Hahelchim Meseres Alinoi. Rabbi Moshe Feller, he was sent by the Rebbe to Minnesota, and he started in Minnesota a yeshiva for women. The yeshiva was very successful, and his students started to come to Crown Heights, to Machan Chana, the Rebbe's yeshiva for women in Crown Heights, and he was invited, since most of the students there looked at him and his wife as their father and mother, because he was instrumental in bringing many of his students to Yiddishkeit. So he was invited to lead the Seder for the women in the women's yeshiva in Machan Chana. So he comes to Crown Heights to lead the Seder, 1978, and he and his wife are very excited because the Rebbe himself would visit the Seder of many communal Seders. They would visit the Seder of the Russians, Seder of the Persians, and that would also the Seder of the yeshiva students. That would stop by for many years by the communal Seders that were being done in the neighborhood. And that would also stop by the Seder for the women's yeshiva. So when the Rebbe came in, on the night of the Seder, the yeshiva was, I think, in the third year, 1978, I think it was the third or fourth year of Machan Chana. They already had over 100 girls there. And when the Rebbe came in, everyone, of course, is watching the Rebbe's every move. Everyone's paying attention. The Rebbe comes in, and the Rebbe inspected. They went downstairs, upstairs to all the classrooms, looking around. And finally, the Rebbe stops, and the Rebbe says, "Who is going to say the 4 questions?" So Rabbi Feller points to his son. So Rebbe asks him, "The kennst du vier Kashas al peh? Do you know the 4 questions by heart?" Rebbe asks him in Yiddish. He knew Yiddish, but he was a Chassidish boy, a little boy, and he was a little overwhelmed. So the Rebbe asked him again in English, "Do you know the 4 questions by heart?" And that he knew the answer. He said, "Yes, I know the 4 questions by heart." And then the Rebbe turned to Rabbi Feller, and the Rebbe said, "And do you know the answers?" Rabbi Feller, everyone started laughing, and Rabbi Feller didn't respond, and the Rebbe left. It was a very successful Seder. Everyone was very into it. The Seder finished at 4:30 in the morning. So he didn't wake up on time to daven the next day. He strolled into 770, he strolled into Rebbe's shul at the conclusion of the davening. When he came into 770, Rabbi Klein, Aleph Shalom, Rebbe's secretary, was looking for him. Rabbi Klein said, the Rebbe wants to speak to you. The Rebbe generally, I don't know of any other situation where the Rebbe called someone into his room right after davening, but the Rebbe called him into his room right after davening, and the Rebbe was still wearing his talis. And the Rebbe said to him, I want you to know that when I asked your son if he knows the 4 questions by heart, it wasn't a joke. When I asked you if you know the answer, it also wasn't a joke. I had something in mind. And the reason I asked your son in English, it also wasn't just I happened to ask him in English, but I had something specific in mind that I asked him that I could only really express in English. The question I had was, does he know the 4 questions by heart? A child doesn't understand why we're celebrating Pesach again this year. We celebrated Pesach already last year. Why are we celebrating Pesach again this year? Why are we doing it again? We already celebrated last year. So the child doesn't get it. And there's a question in his heart. What are we doing this for? And that's what I asked you. Do you know the answer? Do you know how to answer the child's question? Because the truth is that we have to relive going out of Mitzrayim this year as if we never did it before. Because where we have to get to this year, it's something that's brand new. There's a new exodus from Egypt that's happening now that never happened before. So the Rebbe said, do you understand? And Rabbi Feller didn't say anything. He's in the Rebbe's room. He's a chassid, doesn't know if he's supposed to speak. He's not supposed to speak. The Rebbe asks him again. The Rebbe says the entire explanation again. The answer to the child's question is that we're reliving Pesach again this year. And where we have to go this year compared to where we have to get there, we're still Mitzrayim. And that's what we're celebrating it again. The Rebbe asked him, do you understand? He had to say, yes, I understand. So Rabbi Moshe Feller was actually born on the first, it's his birthday, the first day of Pesach. So he said he's a bit of an opportunist, and Rebbe would have audiences with people on their birthdays, and here he's in the Rebbe's room and it's his birthday. So he told the Rebbe, today is my birthday. My personal exodus from Egypt was after the Seder at midnight years ago on this day. I left Egypt and I was born today on Passover. So the Rebbe said, birthday is the same thing. Your neshama came in the world. You have a neshama. Why are you celebrating your birthday again this year? You already have a birthday last year. The answer is that Hashem every year on your birthday gives you a new energy, a new chayis, a new life, a new light. And that energy that you get on your birthday is something that was never there before. And therefore, what you're able to get to this year is something which is far beyond wherever you were last year. Then the Rebbe asked him, please tell the women in the yeshiva that it was not a joke, and please relay to them what I said. Rabbi Feller, of course, fulfilled his mission and told them that the meaning of the Seder and the meaning of a birthday. And I was thinking that this is something which is very relevant to tonight. First of all, we're celebrating Pesach, and although everyone is very busy, the Rebbe tells us how we have to pay attention to learn the halachas of Pesach. We have to pay attention to share shmura matzah with others, and we have to go out of our way to re-experience Pesach in a way that we never did before. And it's Yud Aleph Nissan. Yud Aleph Nissan is a day that the Rebbe was born. And just like we know about Moshe Rabbeinu, the day when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, the house he was in became full of light. And Moshe Rabbeinu's light continued to grow and grow and grow. Moshe Rabbeinu was called Geil Rishon, Geil Achrein, the first Redeemer, the last Redeemer. Eventually, the light of Moshe Rabbeinu was able to break through the boundaries of exile, and the Jewish people were redeemed. In a similar way, the Arizal says that in the day that we commemorate, not just remembering something that happened, but the Yom Ein L'Zkar Manasim, by commemorating it and talking about it, you bring into the world the godly energy of that day. So just like Hashem brought to the world the neshama of the Rebbe on this day, and the world became full of a new light that was never here before, so every year in Yud Aleph Nissan, there is a renewal of that light. There's something that's brand new. Mailim B'Kodesh every year in a way that was never there before. And we see this throughout the years of the Rebbe's leadership. There are many new initiatives. The Rebbe only began on the Rebbe's birthday. This year, I think this is highlighted for all of us in a very practical, balabatisha, down-to-earth way. I don't know how long it takes you to say the Rebbe's kapitel, the Rebbe's psalm but however long it took you till now, it's going to take you more than 10 or 20 times the amount of time to say it today and tomorrow until next year, Yud Aleph Nissan. The previous Lubavitch Rebbe said that the reason we say the kapitel of the Rebbe is in order that the light of the Rebbe should shine in us. That's the purpose of saying the kapitel. So this year, naturally, without doing any major thought, the major meditation, we're going to be thinking a lot about our connection to the Rebbe and about the kapitel of the Rebbe and how that we want to channel and bring the Rebbe's light into ourselves, into our families. And we know that this is a brand new light this year, something that was never there before. And it's something that we need and we're connecting to. And we need to be somewhat different today more than we were yesterday. Hashem gave us something brand new. We have to take that and we have to leave the Mitzrayim where we were before, because the Rebbe is giving us something that's brand new. And therefore we have to, Gufa Basar Esha Azil, the Gemara says that the body follows the head. So there's new revelation that Hashem is giving us today, and we have to make a vessel for it by going somewhere out of where we were before and to connect to that. So let's say L'chaim Levracha, that Baruch Hashem, we have a Rebbe. Baruch Hashem, we connect to the Rebbe. Baruch Hashem, it's Yud Aleph Nissan. Baruch Hashem, there's a new light, there's new chayas, there's new simcha. Let's say L'chaim, that we should be able to become vessels for this vessels for this new light, and this light should break through the boundaries of Golus, and we should see Taka tonight, Gil Yishon Gil Achnin, Gul Mitzvah Shlema, and the Mashiach Tzekinu. L'chaim, L'chaim V'racha. Before we hear from Rabbi Jacobson, maybe we could have a nigan, Menachem Mendel, any nigunim available.
It's my turn, or we're waiting for something? What are we doing?
If you didn't say L'chaim yet, it's not your turn. You said L'chaim already, Rabbi Jacobson?
All day I've been saying L'chaim. When did you begin?
No, we have to say L'chaim to catch up to you. We're ready for you, Rabbi Jacobson. L'chava, please.
L'chaim to you all. L'chaim. U'levrocha. Well, I think we have to begin with a thing that is on everybody's mind, and that is a bracha for Refuah Shlema and Kreva to all those that are suffering from this coronavirus. Eibusher should be benachem and console the families of those that have lost loved ones. It's not a joke. It's a real magefa, a real epidemic. And I think above all, we have to recognize that even though we may see and believe that there is a greater good in everything, but at the same time, the same Eibishter told us that we have to follow the V'chai to do whatever it takes. The doctors and Rabbanim are telling us to be careful. That the Ramah Paskins, when it comes to an epidemic, you don't rely on miracles. You do whatever you have to do. At the same time, trach gut wird sein gut, and it's a balancing act that is not always easy because people are extremely overwhelmed. I can tell you from my own experience in the last few weeks that I've been doing a lot of programming online, that people are scared, frightened, even hysterical in some cases, because of the most important thing is the unknown and the uncertain. We don't have a clue where this is going tomorrow and so on. So I feel that the opening of anything, even Aleph, Nissan, Farbrengen, all the brachas that the Rebbe brings us, and a day like this brings us, and Pesach, we are, however, in the middle of a Seder. And just like by the Eden, the night of Mitzrayim, Moshe told the Jewish people, "Va'atem lo yiseitzu ish mepesach beisei ad boker," that you shall not leave your homes until the morning. In our case, it's more than just one night. So clearly, even then, the Eibishter could not distinguish between a Jew and a Mitzri and an Egyptian. And yet, as Rashi says there in Parsha Boy, God said that Nitnu Reshus Lamashchis, when God forbid, the destructor is given permission. In some strange way, there's a certain lack of discretion, whether it's a tzaddik or not tzaddik, whether it's a Jew or it's an Egyptian. And we have our own Magefa right now. And I would feel amiss, and I think the Rebbe would want us to just make believe it's not happening. We recognize that it's happening, and we give each other strength. And frankly, my whole life I've been busy with the Rebbe's works from the early days when I was a bocher, a student in yeshiva, Chazer, Amaniach, repeating, remembering the Rebbe's Farbrengens and then writing them. And I've been really digging everywhere to find that the Rebbe speak about anything like this. Fortunately, I guess, there's never been an event like this, an event that affects 8 billion people and every sector of society. Never has it been a case where the world stopped, and travel and schools. I mean, there have been localized tragedies, but in such a scope, I cannot find that one precedent for it in the Rebbe's time. There were epidemics and pandemics in the past, and we can learn from them. But yet, I have to say, there's no question in my mind, and I say this to all of you, whoever you are and wherever you are, that there's a point where you have to rise to the occasion. This is perhaps, besides Mashiach coming, going to be the life-defining event of our lives, the defining event of our lives, because of its magnitude, sheer magnitude. And we're going to look back one day in this Yud Aleph Nissan Tafshin Pei, at the beginning of April 2020. And the question is going to be asked, what did you do? And we don't want to be able to answer. We don't want to answer. I did nothing. I was afraid. I just shrank back and retreated. Because the Rebbe taught us, if Yud Aleph Nissan teaches us anything, is that we have to be proactive human beings. Yes, there are things we cannot control. We cannot control the virus. We cannot control its spread. We can control, obviously, of being careful about ourselves and other people's lives and health, and following the law, the guidelines, stay home, quarantine. It'll be a Pesach in a very solitary fashion. But we cannot control much of it. But we can control, and this is what always has been the story that the Rebbe taught us, we control our attitude. You know, a month or two ago, if someone would have asked you or me or anybody, tell me, could you imagine that suddenly every schedule and every plan has been disrupted? You know, you no longer have the excuse, I got to go to work tomorrow morning. Or I have I'm going to some entertainment, or I have tickets for a baseball game, or a bar or a club, whatever it may be. It's all right now stopped. And no way that this world would have stopped on its own. So this is a mystery why it happened, but it happened. So the question is, when we look at it, how do we react? So we can react very defensively, very frightened. I don't know what to do. I'm out of control, so many people are saying. But inner control is completely in our hands. Share with you a story. Tov Shalom Adalit in 1974. It was right after the Yom Kippur War in Israel. The former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, He was then a Rav, a rabbi in a small town in Netanya in Israel. He came to see the Rebbe in 1974. I heard the story from him directly. The Rebbe asked him, among other things, what's the mood? What's the mood like in Israel? What's the mood? What are people saying? What are they feeling? And he said it's bad. Because in stark contrast, if you know the history, the 6-Day War in 1967 was miraculous. In 6 days, Israel tripled its territory. There were very few casualties, relatively speaking. 6 days. So there was a euphoria all over the world. There was a Seder, an awakening everywhere. When Bob Dylan put on film by the Kaisel, Time magazine published, it made like an uproar. And the Rebbe spoke about it. The Rebbe spoke how this is an awakening, an opportunity to change the world. So that was euphoria. But the Yom Kippur War, without going into details, there were mistakes made. There was arrogance. They were caught by surprise, the Jews, on Yom Kippur. There were over 2,000 casualties for Israel. That was a tremendous number. That's like 100,000 in the United States or more, maybe even more. So the mood in Israel was very down. People were very depressed. So Rabbi Lau tells the Rebbe in Israel, he said in Yiddish, Aleph Farbrengen, everyone's asking, was wird sein? What's going to be? In Hebrew, you say, ma yiyeh, what will be? What will be? Like people saying now, we're raising our hands. What's going to be? Are we going to go back to work? The economy, am I going to be laid off? Health-wise, what's going to be here? They're not even talking about conquering and eradicating the disease. They're talking about containing it, lowering the curve, flattening the curve. So the Rebbe answers him. This is the way he told me the story. He says the Rebbe grabbed his wrist like this, and he said, Harav Lau, Rabbi Lau, we Jews never ask what's going to be. We ask, what are we going to do? We don't ask ma yiyeh, we ask ma naseh, what are we going to do? Not what will be. A victim asks what will be, as if we have no control. We ask, what are we going to do about it? The Rebbe, in a number of letters, many letters, talking about the Holocaust and other tragedies. I remember one specific letter to a doctor who asked the big question, why? Why would God allow 6 million of his people to be killed only for one reason, because they were the Jewish people? 1.5 million children were gassed, exterminated. So he asked the Rebbe why, and the Rebbe's answer, a very moving letter, it's a 3-page letter in English. If any of you want to see the letter, it's a very interesting letter about all times, including now. And I'm not comparing tragedies, obviously. Every tragedy is its own. The Rebbe answers, we don't ask why because we don't know why. It's God's mysterious ways. Even if you find some way of explaining it, God could have done it in a different way that wouldn't have been painful. What we ask is, what are we going to do about it? So you hear, it's a tremendous insight into life. We don't ask why, and we don't say what's going to be, as if we have no say and no, we ask, what are we going to do? So what does that mean? We can't control events, as I said, outside, but we can absolutely control what our attitude. I saw this as a living witness for many years, sitting by the Rebbe's feet. And I feel literally, and I say this with all humility, I feel like I've been trained for this moment. Because I saw with my own eyes what a leader is. What is a leader? That when there's a war, God forbid, so commander-in-chief is running the show, right? Now, when everything is going well, everybody's happy. But what happens if there's, unfortunately, a setback and the enemy attacks, surprise attack, or there's an epidemic, a plague? So there are soldiers who'll just run away. They're going to desert the army and just go home. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up only when there's a party, when it's going well. What does the others do? The others that are reckless, they say, no, we just forge ahead. We make believe nothing happened, which of course is irresponsible. What does a good commander-in-chief do? He says, 1 second now. We have a setback. Yes, it's not going the way we planned, But we are not retreating. We'll regroup, and we're going to figure out how to navigate. You know the difference between a good swimmer and a bad swimmer is when there's a storm. When the water is calm, everybody can swim, more or less. But when there's a storm, you see the difference. A bad swimmer will try to fight the tide. And God forbid, sometimes the tide wins and he can drown, God forbid. A good swimmer sees a storm. You know what he does? He stops swimming. I'm going to let the storm carry me. I'll float. I'm not going to fight the tide. A good swimmer navigates. And sometimes you navigate in easy times, and sometimes it's challenging. This is what your Aleph Nissan teaches us. You know, people ask me the question, you love your Rebbe. You celebrate his birthdays, 25 years that he's not here in this physical world. You're celebrating his 118th birthday. Can you explain this to me exactly? Not even here. So, of course, the answer is we're not celebrating the physicality of the Rebbe. We're celebrating the spirit of the Rebbe. We're celebrating what the Rebbe stood for. Even Begashmis, even when the Rebbe was here, Begashmis and the Shema Beguf, when you could see him and touch him and talk to him directly as humans talk flesh and blood. What do you think? What does he say in Tanya? Chai of a tzaddik, the life of a tzaddik is spiritual life. Chaim Ruchnim. You see a body, flesh and blood? Yeah. You know, when people, for example, what are we really? When I talk to you, you talk to me. There's personality. We're not just two bodies communicating. A Rebbe embodies the soul, the neshama, what God wants of us. So what did the Rebbe do? Why are we celebrating the Rebbe's birthday? Not just living in the past. Some of you maybe never saw the Rebbe. Some of you may have been born after the Rebbe, after Gimel Tammuz. We celebrate that a leader was given to us by God to give us strength and fortitude and confidence and hope, a commander-in-chief exactly, that in all times we forge ahead. Yes, we're practical and we're prudent and we have to stay home now and we have to do what we're told. That's a Teda, that's halacha. You can't put yourself in danger, you can't put other people in danger. It's part of Teda, not just because you're selfish or because we're being common sense, because that's what the Teda says. It wants us to be healthy people. At the same time, we have to bolster and boost our inner resources. What did the Rebbe say when he turned 70 years old? Long time ago, Tafshin Lamed Beis, 1972. So the Rebbe said, people are telling me time to retire. After all you've accomplished, you now can calm down and relax. 1972. The Rebbe dedicated a whole Yud Aleph Nissan Farbrengen to say what? You know what he said? Age is not what it says on the passport. Age is the spirit of a person. You could be 20 years old and behave like a 100-year-old. Lazy, unmotivated, and so on. And you could be 100 years old and behave like a 20-year-old. It's all in the spirit. When you're driven by a mission, God forbid, how could you in some way weaken that? God blesses you with another year, with another day. You have to use it to the fullest. Whole Farbrengen. I remember I was a young boy then. I was 15 years old. But it left such an impression on me. Not just that the Rebbe refused to retire, just the attitude, this sense of urgency, the sense of drive. You know, a few months ago, or just a month ago, if you ask most people in this country, young men and women, or older young men, what do you stand for? What are you ready to fight for? What values? What are you ready to die for? I don't mean physically die, God forbid. I mean a complete commitment. Most people would answer money, power, control, maybe sexuality, my video games, sports, the list goes on. Now suddenly all of that has been taken. All of that we suddenly realize doesn't have that much value. You see, we could stop it all. Yes, something unimaginable. So what do you really value? Everybody, and I can tell you this is the work I do. Millions, billions of people are right now seeking because there's only inner life. A guy just called me the other day. He's in the world of finance. He comes from a Chassidus Shaham, but he got busy, made a lot of money. He's in the world of finance. He tells me, you know, the first time I learned the Maimer Chassidus in 10 years, because I realized there's no outer life. My business is closed, trying to keep things going a little online. But essentially, the only thing is inner life. If you don't have an inner neshama life now, you can go crazy from this. whether it's connecting to our families, connecting to our spouses, connecting to our values. I mean, I find it mind-boggling. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I wish this was without pain and without loss. But if you take out that, this is like, who would have imagined? And I speak now chassid to chassid. 29 years ago, the Rebbe said, what did the Rebbe say 29 years ago? I did everything I can to bring Mashiach. Now do what you can. So I think 29 years ago. I'm not a young man. I was there. I rode the Farbrengens. I was right there in the center of all the action. And I say, so what happened in 29 years? Okay, we did here an effort, there an effort, but it was more or less business as usual. So I say to myself, everything is divine providence. I don't even attempt to explain why God did this. But I say, you know what? Suddenly, the whole world, 8 billion people have stopped and are receptive. They're receptive to some message. And beautifully speaking, you know how much kindness and goodness has suddenly happened in the last few weeks? There are always people who are taking advantage and are not, exploiting and not doing right things. But majority, you know how many people are reaching out to people they never spoke to in years? Offering a kind word, technology. You know how many Zoom conferences like this? I myself have been, I'm thinking now, at least 15 such conferences with hundreds, if not thousands of people. Just today, I already did 2. This is the 3rd. Tomorrow, I'm doing one in London and one the next day in Scottsdale. And it's all about inspiration. And people are coming. They're receptive because that's what they're looking for. And it's interesting. Those people that are staying sane are those that are not focusing on themselves. Oi, what happened? What's going to happen? As I said. Or why did it happen? Or what's the government doing? Or how fast is the outbreak? The people that are keeping healthy, so I'm talking about psychologically, are the people who are doing things of service, offering to volunteer, calling friends, sending messages. Those are people, look at them, and you'll see that they get inner strength when they do that. So to me, I look at this, and today's Yud Aleph Nissan, the Rebbe's 118th birth, that's what he taught us, to be leaders. My father was a journalist. He would always tell me there are 3 types of people. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. Which one are you? We were taught to make things happen. You may remember in Crown Heights, there was a Jew. We called him Tevye of Crown Heights, like Tevye of Fiddler on the Roof. His name was Shimshon Stock. Shimshon Stock told me once a story. That he was a bocher, he was a student in the early and mid-40s. The Rebbe, who was then the Ramash, was not Rebbe yet, gave him 15 minutes or a half hour every Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night. They would learn together some Gemara. One Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe comes to 770 for the scheduled Chavrusa, learning together. Shimshon is nowhere to be found. The Rebbe goes out on the porch in front of 770, and he's looking and looking. And there he sees Shimshon, he's running to the subway. The Rebbe says to him, come over here. Comes over. Where are you going? Don't we have a shir now? Don't we have a chavrusa class? Learning together, learning session. Rabbi, today I have something more important. I must go. The Rebbe said, what could be more important than Torah? He says, it's more important. I can't tell you what it is, but it's more important. The Rebbe said, that's not fair. At least since I dedicated this time to learn with you, at least tell me what's more important. That's at least give me that clarity. So he answered, he tells the Rebbe, the Brooklyn Dodgers are playing the New York Yankees. Crown Heights then was Ebbets Field. Now they're in Los Angeles. They moved to Los Angeles in 1955. But then they were still in Brooklyn. On Bedford Avenue and Crown Street, Ebbets Field. The Dodgers playing the Yankees was a rare occasion. It was called the Subway Series. And he's going to play. He's going to the game. The Rebbe looks at him and he says, and Rabbi, you know what? If you really want, I can get you an extra ticket. The Rebbe says, thank you. I decline. And the Rebbe asked him this question. He said to him, let me ask you this, Shimshon. How much does these tickets cost? He said, what was the cost in 1946, 47? He 6 cents, 7 cents, whatever it was. Okay, he says, the Rebbe says, so explain this to me. You're paying 7 cents a ticket. I know today it's nothing, but 7 cents could have been, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe $100. You're paying a ticket to do what? To go to a stadium to watch how other people play a game. I'm offering you for free, no cost, to be a player in the game. Well, Shimshon told me I was a young fool. I didn't take the Rebbe up on his offer. I went to my game, and I've been playing games since then. And now I'm an older man, and you know what? I think I'm still watching other people play. I don't know if that's completely true. He did many good things. Simcha Shabbos V'Yontav and other great charities and kind acts. But that's what he said. And I said to myself, wow, it's amazing. You can be a player in the game, not be an observant Jew that's just observing others. That's my interpretation of observant Jew. But to be a player in the game to make things happen. And it comes down to a simple equation. And this is, to me, a Yud Aleph Nissan question to each one of us. Are you going to be part of the problem or you're part of the solution? So I know a lot of people say, I'm undecided. You know, like that guy used to say, I used to think I'm indecisive and now I'm not so sure. You know, undecided means you're part of the problem. Let's be very honest. You're either doing something to change things, to make things better, or you're part of the other side. And I don't mean to say it in harsh terms. I can tell you, you know, to me, Yud Aleph Nissan is not just a theoretical day celebrating the Rebbe's birthday. The Rebbe's a great man. He gave us Torah, Chassidus, the leader of the 7th generation. No, the Rebbe gave us also a lesson in life, lessons in life, a methodology. And one of them is that you are a leader. Everyone in their own way. Some people will lead one person and some people will lead thousands of people. You're a leader in the sense that you have the capacity to be proactive, not reactive. And I say this from my heart to each one of you. I really believe that this is a time in history that does not ever happen often. I don't think ever an event like this has happened. There have been epidemics, but they were all in certain areas. That we have now an opportunity not to retreat, but to do whatever we can. And it comes down to simple things. Yes, revisiting our values, our goodness and kindness, our love, our courage, and what do we stand for? You will not believe, I'm sure you're seeing it yourself, you will not believe, as I said before, how vulnerable people are, and therefore they're so receptive. As I said, 2 months ago, people had their plans. I had my plans, summer plans, Pesach plans. I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm going to Israel, wherever. Well, you know, those plans are all gone right now. And something else is in control. But that doesn't mean we don't have anything to do about it. We are now the opportunity to literally transform our lives and transform other people's lives. And that's what the Rebbe Yud Aleph Nissan came to teach us. To teach us how to rise to the occasion. To me, honestly, I would feel be a disgrace, an embarrassment to the Rebbe, a person who trained me, a person who I learned so much from, that if I would not react and behave in a way that would make the Rebbe proud, would make us all proud. So I say to you all, we're here on the 11th day of Nissan. 3 days will be Pesach. It's going to be a very challenging Pesach for many. You know, people, I was just on a different call a few days ago with parents and educators. What do we tell our children? Zaidi, Bobby, our grandparents can't come. We're not going to have that big Seder we usually had. Or we were going to travel somewhere. What do we do? We're all like quarantined. It's like very frightening. So I said, you know what you're going to do? You're going to do something that the Jewish people always did. If we got frightened in Mitzrayim, we would not be the people we are. If anything, we can teach the world. I was just reading an article in the newspaper last week, that a cataclysmic event in the Jewish people's history can teach us all what to do. What happened with the Jews in Mitzrayim? For 210 years, 86 bitter, hard genocide. The Nazis were in power for 10 years, a little more. The Egyptians were in power for hundreds of years, and it was a Holocaust. And what happened to the Jews? You'd think they would have destroyed them. Their morale, if not physically, their morale, their spirit. No. The Jewish people became the greatest nation in history, forged and shaped under duress and oppression. And just look at how the psukim come alive in Chumash. Look in the beginning of Shmos, story of Exodus, the story of Egypt. Unbelievable verse, which is the basis of all recovery and healing today. Really, addiction, anything. What is the verse? Maybe you can guess it. Kesheyano Esam. As they were oppressed, the Jewish people were oppressed, Ken Yirbe v'Chen Yifritz. In direct proportion to how oppressed they were, they flourished and they thrived. Not just survived, not just made it through. They flourished and they thrived. You know, I've always used the verse when it comes to people with challenges. What did the Jews become? A nation that changed the world. Now you think they were slaves. They were completely subjugated under the control of a force outside of them. And they turned it into greatness. And people recognized that. And it didn't happen once. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a outlier. It wasn't a fluke, an anomaly. It happened again and again. We get to Eretz Yisrael, we build the Beis HaMikdash, then come the Babylonians, they destroy the temple. A few hundred years later, we have to deal with the Persians and the Greeks, and then we have to deal with the Romans who destroyed the second temple. And 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years later, tell me what's happened in those 2,000 years. If it wasn't the Crusaders, it was the Inquisition. If it wasn't the pogroms, it was the Holocaust. Expelled, killed, murdered, blood libels, overtaxed, discriminated. And here we are. Here we are, the promise to Avram Avinu, thousands of years ago, 3,800 years to be exact, that your children will spread across the world like the stars in heaven. I don't care how skeptical you are. You can't deny the promise was fulfilled. Each one of you is a walking miracle. So no one can tell us that we will be destroyed. We're going to say in a few days, V'hi she'amda lanu laviseinu, she'lo yechad bilvad amda aleinu l'chalisenu. V'hi, what's the V'hi she'amda lanu? What withstood all the challenges in every generation that came to destroy us? The V'hi, in the Nister, in an obscure way, refers to our faith, our amunah, our trust. And in the promise, in the haftacha, in God's promise, that you will get through this. Why it has to come with pain and suffering is God's mystery. I'm not even going to venture there. But Kodesh Baruch Hu matzilenu miyadam. So everyone interprets b'chol der v'der. It means the people, the non-Jewish nations that attacked us. But it could also be a pandemic. It could be other forces that attack us. So we're going into Pesach, and many people are saying, what am I going to do? And people trembling. What am I going to do? What am I going to do Pesach? How could I even celebrate a Seder? And then we have to listen to the rabbis. They're telling us, obviously, that you don't have to ever put anything in danger and you don't have to go crazy about it. But I respond the exact opposite. Yud Aleph Nissan comes to us and Pesach comes to us as tools. These are gifts that if you use it properly, they can help you get through this, just like we got through Mitzrayim then, we get through the Mitzrayim of today. You all know the Maimer Chazal, right? B'chol der v'der. Alter Rebbe adds B'chol yem v'yem. And every generation, every day, we have to envision. We have to envision as if we left Egypt. Let me ask you, have you ever been to Egypt? Who's been to Egypt? You could say we have to remember the events that happened. But what does it mean to envision as if we're leaving Mitzrayim? The answer, if you know a little chassidus, Mitzrayim doesn't just mean a nation, a geographic country on the map called Egypt. It means Mitzarim v'gvulim. Mitzrayim has a deeper meaning. It's a archetype of all constraints, boundaries, limitations, fears, uncertainties, inhibitions, you name it. Fill in all the blanks of our challenges today is the Mitzrayim of today. Good, we're not dealing with the Egyptians, we're not dealing with Nazis, we're not dealing with the Crusaders, we're dealing with the Mitzrayim of our time. So tell me how alive Pesach comes now. Chayev Adam Lemer, we are responsible to envision that we're leaving Mitzrayim. Today we don't need to envision it. Everyone's experiencing it. We're quarantined, we're limited, we can't do this, you can't do that. But comes Pesach tells us, you know what Pesach is? The word Pesach means to transcend, to pass over. That we have the ability to rise even above any Mitzrayim. And just as we vanquished Mitzrayim then, we'll vanquish it now. You'll say, what do you mean? What are you talking about? There's a disease going on. It's contagious. Yes, so we have to do everything to protect ourselves health-wise. But our spirit cannot be broken. And our attitude, some of us have families. Your children are looking at you. This is an opportunity of a lifetime because they will see how you behaved under duress. Was it Kashayano Ese Ken Yirba V'Chen Yifritz? Then they will have a lesson in life that whenever they have a setback, whenever they have a challenge, they saw what you did. And we have to also do it for ourselves, for our own morale, for our own pride, for that matter. So we will get through this, but attitude is everything. And I'm really taking my cue here from Yud Aleph Nissan. This is, talking what's the relevance of the Rebbe to our time? That's the message. What do you think the Rebbe, what was 1950 like when the Rebbe became leader? Does anybody know? It was 5 years after World War II. You can imagine what the morale of the Jewish people was like. A Holocaust had just decimated a third, 33% of the Jewish people. And what about the rest of the Jews? No family. People were orphaned. It was such a demoralizing period in history. And what did the Rebbe do? He didn't say, let's lick our wounds and let's, have mercy on ourselves. He right away began, he says, we're going to build and we're going to go on the offense. We're not going to play defense and we're going to change the world. I'll share with you a story that happened 10 years earlier. That was 70 years ago, 80 years ago. You all know the Frierdiker Rebbe gets off the boat. We have today videos of it. Frierdiker Rebbe is in a wheelchair. He was already suffering. He gets off the boat. They take him to the Greystone Hotel. This story inspires me every time. It's such a tremendous story. They take him to the Greystone Hotel. Now remember, 1940 is in Nazi Europe, was destroying and killing every Jew at the time. It was not good times. You can imagine how much aggravation that caused the Frierdiker Rebbe. He barely escaped. A 12-day journey on a boat in such dangerous times, dangerous waters. Arrives in New York, gets off the boat. They take him to the Greystone Hotel. Now everybody thought that Rebbe was not feeling well. He was physically not well. That he would want to rest. No. Hebt sich nicht an. The Rebbe wants to say a few words. I was so taken by this, I actually asked eyewitnesses who were there. They're not with us anymore. Rabbi Yitzchak Groner, Olav Shalom, was there. Rabbi Mordechai Altine, Olav Shalom. Herschel Schusterman. There were people there. Not a lot. Beryl Baumgarten, but him I didn't have a chance to speak to. The Frierdiker Rebbe is sitting in a wheelchair, speaking to 20 people, 30 people, I don't know how many people. They said all b'pe'echa. I've heard this from different people. He was speaking as if he was speaking to millions of people. And what did he say? I did not come to America to save myself. I'd rather not have come. The Eibishter forced me to come. I would have preferred to stay there with my brothers and sisters. But now that the Eibishter forced me to come, so why am I here? Not to protect myself and just, I've saved my own skin and saved my family's. I came here to demonstrate that America is not different, and we're going to build organizations and institutions and yeshivas and shuls. And one day in America, little Jewish boys will be running around with tzitzis and yarmulkes, and little girls will be running around like good Chassidish little girls of Yerushalayim, and it will become a mokum Torah and harbotzes Torah and mitzvahs and davening and chassidus and so on. He spoke with a breitkeit. I say breitkeit, with expanse, with a complete resolve. I heard this from what happened next. Frierdiker Rebbe goes into his room And some of the Chassidim who heard the Frierdiker Rebbe speak said to the Rebbe, can we come in and just share a few words with the Rebbe? We want to just speak to the Rebbe heart to heart. Okay. They come in, they tell the Frierdiker Rebbe. We know this from the diary of the Frierdiker Rebbe. They tell the Rebbe, they said, we heard everything the Holy Rebbe said to us. However, we want to just make sure the Rebbe doesn't get disappointed. We want to tell the Rebbe that this is completely pipe dream. I don't know what word they used. It's fantasy. This is a different world. We understand the Rebbe's commitment and we love you. But to protect the honor of the Rebbe and the honor of your Holy Father and the honor of your Holy Grandfather and the honor of your Holy Great-Grandfather, you can imagine. We want to tell you this is not going to happen. And the Rebbe should just lower his expectations. They leave the room. Frierdiker Rebbe has an entry in his diary. What does he write in his diary? He says, these were my friends, not my enemies. These were my supporters. So you could imagine, he writes in Yiddish, he writes, you could imagine, kann sich vorstellen, the Tränen was ein gegossen von meinen Augen, der erste Nacht auf Amerikanerboden. Maybe paraphrasing, I'll translate. You could imagine the tears pouring from my eyes the first night I was on American soil, hearing these words. Now, you can imagine, Frierdiker Rebbe did not listen to them, thank God, and didn't listen to other advisors and counselors, who would have all said in 1940, let's just damage control, let's just survive. He began to build in a wheelchair with ailing health. The Rebbe came a year and a half later, also barely making it out of Nazi Europe, Aleph, 1941. The Rebbe helped the Frierdiker Rebbe. And 9 years later came Tafshin Yud, 1950. Frierdiker Rebbe was nostalgic, Yud Shvat. We're now honoring 70 years. So it's 118 years of the Rebbe's birth and 70 years from the Rebbe's leadership. And what did the Rebbe do? Exactly the same approach. It's all one thing. World War II is over? Yes. Jews are refugees. They didn't know language. They didn't have jobs. They had no money, no family. They're all coming to America. The Rebbe doesn't say, okay, you know what? We're going to take 10 years first to just get over the shock. PTSD. We're going to deal with the trauma. And we're going to go to therapy. Not that the Rebbe was not sensitive to what happened, but he knew the best cure, the best defense is offense. And the Rebbe went on an offense that has never ended till this day. Had the Frierdiker Rebbe even listened 1% to those advisors, had the Rebbe succumbed in any way to the depressed state of the Jewish people of the world, we would not be here today. I personally owe a debt of gratitude. That spirit is what gave me energy. That's why I do what I do. Each of you has to make a cheshbon hanefesh. It's a day of accounting in that sense. But to me, that's what the Rebbe represents. Essentially, why are we here on earth? A driving sense of urgency, a sense of mission and purpose. And now, more than ever, I've never seen this like this. It's easy to relate to that because we don't have distractions. You can't say my mission and purpose is I'm going to my job tomorrow morning or my other entertainment or whatever it is. That's right now stripped from us. Hopefully, things are going to get back to normal, but I hope it won't get back to normal in this sense. So Yud Aleph Nissan is today relevant more than ever. Why is the Rebbe here on this earth? Why was the Rebbe sent by God to this world? Why was he born on Yud Aleph Nissan, the 11th of Nissan, Tofrei Samach Beis, in the year 1902, at the turn of the century, and was also going through tremendous upheaval. A little after that would be the Russian Revolution and World War I. And by the way, the Spanish flu. I was looking desperately if the Rebbe ever reacted. The Rebbe was 16 years old when the Spanish flu took place, 1918. That killed, they say, almost 50 million people. Didn't find anything from the Rebbe. I'm sure there's something. The Rebbe went through World War I and World War II. Where was he? In Berlin when the Nazis came to power. In Paris when they occupied France. All to teach us that nothing can destroy us. Not only that, we become stronger in the face of adversary. And I think this message has to be said to ourselves, to our children, our families, and to everyone we come in contact with, to find the words and find the resources. And this is true across the board. Our mission continues. We're marching toward the Geula. Yes, we have our situation. God wants us right now to be quarantined. Azeidas. Go figure. That's what he wants. Who runs the show? God leads the footsteps of a person. He decided, let's say he decided last year you wanted to go Pesach to some program. Your plane ends up being grounded. You end up on an island with nobody. What would you do? Yes, it's not pleasant, but that's where God wants me to be. I'm going to figure it out. That is the healthy approach. Don't think you have it all figured out with your plans and schedules. Just because we thought our lives were in control a few months ago doesn't mean it was in control. It just meant we thought it was in control. So now we surrender. That's what you want of me, God? I'm going to figure out, I'm going to make a Seder greater than ever before, whether you're alone or with immediate family. We're going to show, we're going to be creative and go through every step, Kadesh, Urchatz, and demonstrate how those are tools to help us become greater people, greater Jews, greater Chassidim. I have no question that that's what the Rebbe would be telling us now. Every time there was crisis, the Rebbe never said, oh, there's a crisis, let's go and hide in the corner. Figure out how we strengthen ourselves. Obviously, all done prudently. V'chai behem, we have to listen to health authorities. I don't want to even leave an impression that it's just pure betochen and you can do whatever you want. There's a Torah. We listen to the Torah. But internally and in our homes, a total freedom. What do you think the Jews did when they were quarantined? Le'seitze ish mepesach beisei ad beker. You think they were sitting and trembling? No, they were celebrating a Korban Pesach with their families. They knew it was an epidemic outside. There was a plague, 100%. But they were not busy with that. They were busy celebrating because that's what Hashem wants me to do now. Everything I've said here, I know I'm speaking in the context of our situation because I did not feel to sit and pontificate about the Rebbe completely disconnected from our time. I don't think the Rebbe would do that. You know, it's true. We have to learn Torah and learn Chassidus, and we have to talk about the virus all the time. And I wasn't focusing on the virus. I'm focusing on the matzav ha'elam, on the situation that we're all in. But we take the cue from the Rebbe, and this affects all times. This is a lesson forever and ever, that we forge ahead and we become stronger in the process. You know, as I said, it's much easier. I've been quarantined myself for a few weeks. I had the symptoms. Thank God I'm out of it. The last symptom was loss of taste and smell. So my taste and smell came back. So that's the good news. I'm celebrating with you. Now I hope to taste and smell only holy things. That's the key. My point is, I have been really nonstop. When Rabbi Levin asked me to Farbrengen, this is why we're here. What's a shaylev? Unless I was busy doing something else. I think all of us have to be in that attitude. I have been nonstop. I'm saying it not again. I'm not tooting my horn. I'm saying it only just as an example. I started a thing just last week called the Daily Spiritual Antidote, which is getting around, you know, because I felt so much negative news. Let's talk a little about the neshama, how to strengthen it. I just right now, literally a few hours ago, I did a whole 15-step soulful and musical journey through the Seder to show how the Seder, how Pesach this year can help us get through this situation and become stronger. You'll probably see about it. It's going to be online. Check it out. Okay, it's a little plug maybe as well, an advertisement, but it's all free. So there's no, it's a service. But the point that matters is that I'm trying to say is that each of us, that's my strengths. I'm trying to do the best I can. But you have to look in your heart and soul and ask one question. What would the Rebbe expect of you now? And he would expect you to be proactive. You're a player in the game. You're not just waiting around and watching. I'll share a personal story. When I was bar mitzvah, Tovshan Lamed, end of 1969. My birthday is a special day. Hey Tevis, 5th of Tevis. Yeah, everyone thinks I changed my date because I work in books. They thought that's too much of a hashgacha pratis. No, I actually was born in Hey Tevis, Tovshan Yud Zayin. I was 30 years old when the verdict came out in court that year. Memzai. Just as an aside, my mother called me that morning around 11 o'clock in my office. I'm sitting in Hanachas, which is the office over 770. And my mother's giving me blessings. I'm her b'char, I'm her firstborn. She's giving me blessings for my birthday, 30th birthday. Suddenly we hear singing in the streets, because my window was not far from outside of 770. My mother says, they're celebrating your birthday? I said, nobody knows it's my birthday. Then we found out that the verdict came back from the court that the Dan Otzach and aside. Anyway, I was bar mitzvah in Tov Shalamet, the 20 years of the Rebbe's leadership, 50 years ago. Yeah. You can calculate my age if you like. You want a second? Okay. So when I was a little boy in Crown Heights, 770 was much smaller than it came later. It was the smallest 770, the early version of 770 before it expanded. And what did we children do? Simchas Torah. We had the best spots. We would sit under the table where the Rebbe would dance hakafos. The Rebbe would dance in the middle of the shul. It was like a square. And we were under the tables. And the Rebbe would bend down with his Sefer Torah. I remember it vividly. And we loved it. It was difficult because people were pushing and but it was special. And now I become bar mitzvah. What's bar mitzvah? They stick a big hat on your head and you think you're an adult. You think you're a gadol. So I'm not going to be under a table simchas Torah. I found one of my uncles. I said, let me stand with you on one of the bleachers. So I stood on one of the bleachers near the Aron Kodesh. Okay. And there I am with his hat on top of my ears. When you're 13, you think you're... Anyway, the Rebbe finishes the first dance, Simchas Torah night. My father was not far from the Rebbe. So the Rebbe says to my father, he always told my father that my father was a journalist, that you'll be zeicha, you'll merit to write about Mashiach in the newspaper. Just as an aside, my father once asked the Rebbe, can I have the scoop to be the first one to report that Mashiach came? So the Rebbe smiled and said to him, as soon as I know, you'll be the first to know. Okay. So the Rebbe turns to my father and says, where's your son? The Zun. Your son always was here, would dance with us. So my father proudly points, there I am standing in the bleacher. And I like an idiot, I'm smiling. The Rebbe says to my father with a smile, he says, Nu, a spectator. No, he already also become a spectator. So you can imagine that I didn't remain in the bleachers. And all the Bochum that year that heard this, no one ever stood in the bleachers again. Only guests would stand. The Bochum would always stand on the ground because of this story. It's a little piece of history people don't know about. But listen to these words. You also became a spectator. Spectator sports. You're watching. Maybe the Rebbe planted in me a seed. I should never be a spectator. So I became a troublemaker. What they call a disruptor. So I wish upon all of you not to be spectators and not to be just observing others. And like that poem they say, I've been observing people, observing people, observing people, observing people. Everybody's watching someone else. The blind leading the blind. Yud Aleph Nissan l'chaim, my brothers and friends. L'chaim to you. The Rebbe God blessed us with the Rebbe to show us what it means to be proactive, to make a difference, each in our own way. Now is our time because now we're challenged. To rise to the occasion. Yud Aleph Nissan is relevant as ever. Not just if you're Chassidish Hergish, you have a feeling the Rebbe, in real terms, a leader, a true visionary. We know how this crisis of leadership today. I don't have to elaborate. We are a true visionary who told us, yes, that we are marching toward Mashiach. The reason I didn't talk about that so much is because right now we also have to deal with the sensitivity. We're dealing with, unfortunately, warm bodies. I don't want to even say it. So we have to be, when you go to Shiva call, you don't say to the person, hey, your father died. That's a sign Mashiach is coming. It's not exactly the right words to say that. Of course, everything is leading to better and it will be better. But right now we have to also be humble. It's a time of humility. There's a mashchis. And we pray to God, should protect everyone, all Jews, all non-Jews for that matter, and bring healing to those that need it. And most importantly, we should learn the lesson so we can finally get rid of this situation. L'chaim to you. I'm going to get a real l'chaim in a minute. I didn't bring my costs for some reason. If you put a little l'chaim into your computer, it may also help. It may get a little more lebedik, the whole situation. So l'chaim to you all on this year Aleph Nissan. We're going to do a nigun, I hope, and we'll continue. This is just the beginning. We're just beginning. And God bless you all, and let us celebrate the Rebbe's birthday and leading us into Pesach Shpias true Zman Cherusenu for every Jew, individually and collectively. L'chaim.
Chaim, Rabbi Jacobson, you mentioned that V'hi Sha'amda means emunah. V'hi Sha'amda means our faith in God. V'hi is, you said it's a feminine expression and refers to our faith. V'hi, Mendel Futafas used to say, means the cup. You shouldn't be a spectator. Everyone, I know you're not supposed to drink by yourself. We're not drinking by yourself. We have about 200 people watching the Farbrengen. So everyone pick up your cup. V'hi Sha'amda. V'hi also means the Jewish women who are blessed and also joining us tonight and have a lot more amunah than men do. Let's say l'chaim, everyone together. V'hi Sha'amda Riksim, we'll wait for you. Get your l'chaim, we'll wait for you. Say l'chaim.
I'll be back in 1 second. I'm getting the l'chaim, okay?
Okay.
Ein minutitschka.
Right for there.
Okay.
Some people I see are being gated with coffee on l'chaim. I think we need to put something inside that coffee. Oh, Yosef Moshe has some good l'chaim. L'chaim, get rid of all the chametz, chevra. Get rid of all the chametz tonight. L'chaim. Let's sing a nigun. Let's say l'chaim together. And let's bring the brachas down. Wish each other well. Wish each other gesund. Say l'chaim. Dov ben Shoshana. Yosef Yitzchak ben Sophia. Yonatan Ariel ben Chana. Everyone, each of us knows. Say the names of it to yourself. We're all connected. Say l'chaim for your emissary for Shem Kreva. L'chaim v'rach. Jacobson, we said one l'chaim, but we'll say another one. L'chaim v'bracha.
L'chaim v'bracha to you. Should be real l'chaim, begashmius and beruchnius in every possible way. And we'll talk some more. I want to share a few things and interesting things about your Aleph Nissan. We'll talk l'chaim to you. Thank you for making this happen. And you see, you know what? A Farbrengen here, we would probably not have had a Farbrengen between us if were it not for this matziv. So this brings opportunity to bring us together. I've been telling everybody, socially distant, but soulfully closer than ever. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim. Michal. Where's your Michal? You need a nigun, Michal. Michal's still here?
Michal's lots of it. Welke Michal is that?
Michal, Dr. Michal Klein.
Yeah. We haven't met, yeah.
Chavod. could sing along. No one could hear you. You could sing along. The Eibishter hears you. You could sing along. You don't have to worry about disturbing the hearing. You're on mute. So sing.
L'chaim.
Thank you very much. Virtual Farbrengen. L'chaim to you all. I was zeicha to, as I mentioned, to be a chayzer and maniach of the Rebbe. What that means, for those that are familiar with those terms, the Rebbe spoke on Shabbos and Yontif, and no recordings and no notes were taken. So how do we have all his words? Because there were a few of us chayzerim that had the ability to remember, retain hours and hours of the Rebbe's words verbatim. And then, after Shabbos and Yontif, we would review it. And the second part of the job was maniach, was writing it down for publication for posterity. To say it was a difficult job is an understatement. It was almost impossible to imagine how we did it, but we did it. So I was also zeicha, as a result, to write many of the brachas that Rebbe would give on Yud Aleph Nissan. Yud Aleph Nissan, on the Rebbe's birthday, a few times a year, the Rebbe's anniversary, the Rebbe's birthday, before Rosh Hashanah, Chassidim would go into Gan Eden HaTachten, which is the room right near the Rebbe's room, and they would give the Rebbe a blessing, and the Rebbe would then respond with a blessing to them. Yud Aleph Nissan was one of those days. So every year the Rebbe gave a blessing. then he would always edit these blessings. So I prepared them for publication. I wrote them up, and the Rebbe edited them always. I did it from the year 1980 till the last Yud Aleph Nissan, 1991. Tafshinun Aleph. As a matter of fact, the later years, it became more than a blessing. It was a whole sikha, a whole talk. One year, the Rebbe spoke about the number Yud Aleph, 11. And the Rebbe said that the number 11 is an interesting number because it reminds us also of negative things. For example, the Sefer Yetzirah says, maybe the earliest work in Kabbalah, that on the Esser Spheres, we all know the Esser Spheres is the 10 building blocks of all existence, that Hashem, Asara Maimoris, with 10 statements created the world. Aseret Sadibris, there's the 10 commandments. So there's the Esser Spheres, Chochmah through Malchus. So the Sefer Yetzirah says, Ech Esser v'loi Teisha, Esser v'loi Achad Osir. 10 but not 9, and 10 and not 11. Because not more and not less. It has to be a perfect circle. 10 is the Misper HaShalom is the expression. It's the perfect number. 11 is already, Chassidus explains, is already outside of the norm. Not in a positive way. That's why Rachmana Litzlan, in Pasha B'chukesai, there's 11 curses. 11. Because that extra one is considered to be, in language of Chassidus, a makif that's not fully integrated. However, the Rebbe explained, 11 also has another element. It has the capacity to transform the negative. So, for example, where do we find another number 11? Anybody want to guess? The Pitim Hakteris. There were 11 Yud Aleph Samamoni Hakteris. The incense brought in the temple, especially on Yom Kippur, by the high priest, had 11 different types of spice, 11 different types of incense. That would be heated up and burned on the Mizbeach HaKteris, which is the internal altar. The outer altar was for karbonis, animals that were offered. The inner Mizbeach HaPnimi was only for Kteris. It was a very subtle type of thing and would give off a beautiful perfume, a beautiful aroma that would fill like a cloud the whole area. Beis Hamikdash, Yom Kippur, the Kedush Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies. We recount this on every Yom Kippur. Why 11? Because it came to repair the negative 11. There's a Kedusha, like a Tzaddik's work, is a perfect circle of 10. But if somebody goes out of the norm and something happens in your life that is like an extra, does something extra that is not needed, comes the 11 Keteris, and they actually create healing. I hope you see where I'm going with this. When there was an epidemic that broke out in the year, time of the Alter Rebbe, probably in the early 1800s. The epidemic was called cholera. You know where it comes from, the word cholera? It comes from a Hebrew word, cholera, cheli ra, a bad disease, a bad illness. So the Alter Rebbe gave us gula then, that people should learn the Parsha of Keteris. This has been repeated. You may have heard it, and some of the Rabbanim have written about it. As a matter of fact, when it broke out, well, it broke out earlier, but when it became a real pandemic, was the Parsha of Keteris in Parsha Kisisa, the end of Tetzaveh and Kisisa. End of Tetzaveh. Why Keteris? So I did a little research. In Parsha Kerach, when Kerach and his cohorts mutineered against Moshe, against God, there was a magefa. There was an epidemic, a plague. People died. Moshe was looking how to stop the magefa. So the Eibishter said, bring Keteris, bring incense. Incense, and then vatatzer hamagefa. The magefa came to an end. The plot thickens. In the Zohar, if you want a source, I'll tell you. In Pasha Vayera, Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, 101a. Talks about a story. Rabbi Acha came to a town, Kfar Tarsha. And they told him there's an epidemic that broke out in this town. And it's only getting worse. So he gathered together a bunch of people and spread them out in the town, and they all were told to learn the Parsha of Ketores. I don't know if you're familiar with the program I do every Sunday night, My Life Chassidus Supply, but last Sunday night, I taught a piece from the Kisvei Arizal that talks about it. You'll not believe the words he says. He speaks mamish as if it's now, that there's illnesses that are not just inside the person, but they spread. They're also the aura, the environment, and the things we touch, and the clothing we wear. And he says it all comes from the 11th klippa, that extra, something that was not refined, something of waste that was not refined. That's the ruchnius, the root of all epidemics. And he says that's why the healing comes from Ketores. So Chassidus explains, what is the difference between eating a meal and medicine? We all need to eat to be healthy. But if, God forbid, there's a disease or infection, just eating is not enough. Because eating is good to keep things stable, to maintain health. But if there's an illness, you need more strength. So it explains Chassidus that karbonis is what you eat. Karboni lachmi, like bread. Ketores you don't consume, you don't ingest. Ketores is a reach, creates a beautiful aroma. Because ketores is like medicine, and karbonis is like food. And if you want to heal something, you need stronger medicine. That's why the 11 ketores repair everything that's negative in the number 11. So it's hard to ignore when you know these ideas of Chassidus, and here we are dealing with an illness, a disease. It's your Aleph Nissan. And I'll tell you something even more interesting. And I'm not looking just for sensational little hints. There's a significant message here. Coronavirus. Do you know what the word corona means? Crown. Yeah, like Crown Heights. Crown. Except, unfortunately, it's a virus. Keser. Exactly. Someone just put up a... What level is Keser? 11. The 10 spheres, Keser is above the structure. So Chassidus explains there's two types of Keser. There's a crown of an evil leader, Amalek, Paroi. The story of Purim is Haman, Amalek. The story of Pesach is Pari, it's Keser of Klippa. What's Keser of Klippa? Let me explain. We all have temptations. We all have taivas. We all have desires that are not always healthy. But they could be explained. I have a desire for food. I have a desire for certain pleasures, etc. But then there is a klippa, a negative energy, a toxin, that has no rhyme or reason. It's called chutzpah b'loi taga. Chutzpah, just audacity. Audacity, arrogance. If you ask yourself, what does arrogance exactly achieve? You could say, you know what? You like to gamble. You like to make money. You like other taivas. I'm not saying they're healthy, but you can find somewhere. But what does arrogance do? When you talk to a Nazi, the hatred for Jews, you say, why do you hate Jews? No reason. I don't need a reason. Amalek doesn't need a reason. It's pure abstinence. You know, you meet people who are just plain arrogant and stubborn. You can't change their mind. That's Keser of Klippa. That's a unique. Pari was like that. Whatever Moshe said, I'm not interested. His heart would harden. Most people, you negotiate. You know what? You lose something. You gain. No, it's stubbornness. What's the tikkun for Keser, for corona of a virus, of a toxic corona crown? It's a holy crown. Keser Malchus. What is that in simple terms? That you commit to something with total stubbornness, but of holiness. That it's not just rational, I'm going to just do a mitzvah or a good deed. No, I'm going to do it with utter passion, determination, unwavering. Look at the Rebbe. Look at the birthday of Aleph Nissan. There was an unstoppable, relentless. The Rebbe would remind me of the waves of an ocean. You ever stand by the waves of a sea? Of an ocean? You stay all night, you're waiting for the waves to go to sleep. They never go to sleep. They're relentless. They come again and again and again, but are relentless in a good way. There's the relentless of the negative side. I remember once hearing someone ask a question. Why did the Rebbe invest so much energy and so much resources just to find a Jew, one Jew? Pesach was coming. He would send a shliach, go to Timbuktu, who knows, find that one Jew and give him a matzah. Find a Jew and put on tefillin. Light a candle. Another mitzvah. So the question was asked, if you think it from a business-like approach, it seems like a very scattered form of using resources. You go fishing where the fish are. Most Jews are in New York, in London, Los Angeles, Tel Aviv, Paris, wherever they are. So you would seem, you know what, let's go where there's the most Jews and work there. But to send somebody who knows where thousands of miles away for a few Jews or one Jew, it seems like a logical question. Obviously, the Rebbe is not a business person. It's quality, not quantity. But the answer, listen to the answer. This is what he speculated. That the Rebbe felt after the Holocaust, where Nazis made their names be erased forever and ever, hunted down Jews in hatred. And every Jew, they never said, no, we're only going where there's a big group of Jews. One Jew, they would go with stethoscopes to look for a Jew hiding behind a wall to hear if there's a heartbeat. Can you imagine how insane they're obsessed? Finding a Jew, what they call a half Jew, a quarter Jew, whatever, that doesn't mean anything to us. So the Rebbe felt that if we don't hunt down Jews with love, even one Jew, with more passion and love than they hunted down Jews with hate, in a way they would have won. I think it's a tremendous insight. So whenever you see a klippah, an obstinate, stubborn, relentless negative energy that doesn't let go, a coronavirus that does not let go, what do? We counter it with Yud Aleph, with a Yud Aleph Nissan Dike Keser Malchus, of a supra-rational commitment that's just as powerful as that virus is, in our connection with each other, in our love with each other. Now, I understand, I'm not suggesting this is going to be the healing agent and the vaccine alone. It's coupled with doing everything medically and looking for a vaccine, doing whatever it takes. But we know Jews always knew that a battle is fought on two fronts. There's the physical front where we need healing and we need medicine and we need all the things that they're attempting. Hopefully they'll achieve it. But there's also a spiritual war, a war for our souls, for our morale, for our spirits, because it could be very demoralizing and very driving a lot of fear in our hearts. That we must stop. So I'm thinking to myself, Yud Aleph Nissan, Yud Aleph Samamoni Hakteris, the power of medicine to reach deeper inside the soul to bring healing. Now again, we wish this never happened. We didn't ask for it. We don't want it. We didn't expect it, but it's here. God, in his mysterious ways, gave it to us. So I say, yes, there's a tremendous lesson. We want to be able to transform the corona, negative, toxic corona, into coronation, into a corona of Kedusha, where we are rising to the occasion, not to be overly poetic, that our crowning achievements are driven by goodness and kindness and love. The Rebbe said a number of times the name of Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek used to go travel to Petersburg, St. Petersburg, where there was a lot of, he had to deal with negotiations to make Jewish life a little easier. But there was always danger involved because they could always arrest him, etc. Time of the Tsar. So the Rebbetzin and his family once told the Tzemach Tzedek, why do you have to go and put yourself in danger? Send a shliach, send a messenger. What happens if something happens to you? Tzemach Tzedek responded, I will respond in the language of the Gemara with an answer and a iboy sema, which means a second option answer. Answer number one, there are the children. The Tzemach Tzedek had 7 children. And the children will take over, basically. So I'm not concerned. And if you want another answer, I'll give you another answer. That the Achdus, the unity of Chassidim, will lead them to Mashiach, to the Gula, to the redemption. The Rebbe, when he repeated the story 100 years after the Tzemach Tzedek passed, remember the Tzemach Tzedek's yahrzeit is also in 2 days. Yud Gimel Nissan. Yud Aleph Nissan, the Rebbe's birthday, Yud Gimel Nissan. This Tuesday. When the Rebbe repeated the story on Yud Gimel Nissan Tafshin Chavav, 100 years from the Tzemach Tzedek's passing, this is what the Rebbe said. Today we don't have the children. It's clearly implying that the Rebbe didn't have children. So we only have the Boyasema. We only have the second answer, that the unity of Chassidim will lead to Mashiach. I recently saw an answer from the Rebbe that if there was true unity, the Geula would have been here a long time ago. And I say to myself, 1 second. We all want the Geula. We want Mashiach. I have no doubt about it. And here's a clear formula. Why is it so difficult for us to achieve that type? Why do we remain divisive? Now, I'm not want to be badmouth anyone. I'm not pointing fingers. But Achdus can always be better. And then suddenly we're struck with this pandemic. And we see acts of unity unprecedented. Why it has to come through negative means? As I said, the mysteries. But imagine using this opportunity. Pesach is coming in 2-3 days. The first time in history that Jews are forced to be home against their will and celebrate Pesach either alone or very much alone, very few people. We have an opportunity now because Jews, there are 16 million Jews, 15, whatever the number is, to reach to all of them. For the first time, we can invite them to a Seder, a virtual Seder, meaning giving them tools to do a Seder. And many are asking how. And I don't just mean technically sending matzah and wine, that's for sure, but giving them the spiritual meaning of a Seder. I mentioned before, that's exactly why I did this. Just released within a few hours ago. I did a 15-step, got to the 15 steps of the Seder, how it can be used as psychological, emotional tools to experience some freedom in these challenging times. Check it out. Maybe something you can share with people. But it doesn't matter. Find something you can share. We have an opportunity. People are really hungry, receptive. And if you could show them the relevance of Pesach, I don't mean they're just the rituals, the relevance. That here you have a holiday that's been celebrated for over 3,300 years, to be exact, 3322. I'm sorry, 3,300, yeah, 3322. 3332, whatever it is. 2448 and 5780. So what's the number? 3,332, yes. Years, but who's counting? Got it. I like you putting me up all the posts. Anything, any message? Right, laugh. There you go, you got it. Which is a time-tested formula in an unbroken chain, and you know the lengths that Jews went to make a Seder. Even during the Holocaust, they didn't have matzah or wine. They did something just to remember. So we have now a Seder that can serve us as a tool to experience some form, not just some, great emancipation. Check it out. Now that I'm providing this tool, no excuse. All you got to do is forward it to somebody and say, check this out. They want to check it out, great, they're not. So this is an unabashed plug for this program, because I really did it from the heart, feeling that if we can get people to see that relevance, they never would have experienced Pesach like that. Last year, I'm busy. I may go to a family Seder, but it would be very, almost like that humor, the comedy of a Woody Allen type of Seder. But now people, first, they are seeking meaning, inner spiritual relevance. We have a Pesach coming. It's like a no-brainer for those of us that understand, and that's what we need to do. And how hard is that to do? Send it to your lists, on your WhatsApps, on Instagram, on the LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube. I know you're impressed that I know all these platforms. Person my age. My point is that we have tools because God, thank God, technology is there. So although we're quarantined, it's not like the 14th century where we can't communicate with each other. And really no excuse. The next few days, that's what I believe each one of us should do. The Rebbe said in the early years in 1950, in the early 50, 51, he said, Rosh Hashanah, I think Pesach also, reach at least 10 Jews and remind them what Pesach is. So now I would say reach 1,000 people. It's not that difficult. It's a press of a few buttons. And you may know somebody that has a list or somebody that knows other people. Where all the degrees of separation are very few, which is yet another message from this virus. So why not use it for the positive? Let's create, no pun intended, a viral impact of the power of Pesach, the power of freedom. And we'd all be surprised how relevant they are. 15 steps toward freedom. So I don't see how any of us can say, no, it's not for me. People are looking for it. I am telling you, people who you would never imagine are looking for deeper meaning now. One person just told me the other day, he says, how many Netflix movies can I watch? I finished all my video games. I'm already sick of it all. Give me something. People want some deeper substance. Every person in their own way, it has to be low. You can't do videos that are hours. This is a 3-minute video what I created. Short, sweet, to the point, with music and melody. I really believe not only will it bring soothing and calm, it's also living up to what Pesach was given to us in the first place. As I said before, each generation we have to envision as if we're recreating it. We have a great opportunity, and let's not lose this opportunity. It's coming in just a few days. People are still quarantined. Nothing's changing in the next 2-3 days. God, in his miraculous way, maybe bring us all to Yerushalayim, and I say that as a prayer and a blessing. But just in case it doesn't happen, let us do what we can do and show that we can find redemption within, salvation within. So l'chaim to you all. 11, number 11, Keser. May we only celebrate holy Kesers, not toxic ones, but beautiful, pure ones, with our families, with our children, if that's what we have, with ourselves. We're all brothers and sisters, all in the same situation. And lo yaziv tzem arisei. The Rebbe, whose birthday is today, does not forsake his flock. In his own way, he's giving us strength. And but we have to make a keli. We have to do what we have to do. That's what was asked of us. Like it or not, the Rebbe told us many times that it cannot just be a gift from above. You must make some effort, a little etzbektana, some little effort. And our prayer is a little l'chaim from our end, and Hashem will shower us with all the blessings for health, begashmis and beruchis. And most importantly, I saw in the Be'er Hagela, it's a commentary on Shulchan Aruch. In the last end of Shulchan Aruch, Choshen Mishpat, you know what it concludes with? The laws of dealing with danger and protecting yourself. So let me just quote the Be'er Hagela says the following. He says, so why is it so important that person should not put themselves in danger? That quarantine themselves if necessary. He says an interesting thing, and he was not a chassid, but he writes in the Chassidish language, he says, because when a person is not completely healthy and in some way endangers themselves, he says there's no greater apocryphsis, there's no greater defiance of God, because God sent you on a mission to fulfill your mission in life. How can you put that in danger? You're basically defying God's mission. He gave you a mission and said, be healthy and strong, and protect your health, not just because you should be healthy for selfish reasons, because I need you here. I need you on this earth to be strong. So he says when a person is reckless with themselves, not with others, they're actually defying God himself. But let's talk on the positive end. Positive end, you and I, and each one of us has an indispensable mission. You can only, what you have to accomplish, I remember the Rebbe saying by many Farbrengens, he said, what each person is absolutely needed, what you have to accomplish in the world, you and only you can accomplish. Your voice, your unique personality, your particular place in this world. Everybody's got their sphere of influence, their connections. So we have to use it to the fullest and really experience a cherus, a freedom like we've never had. This has to be a Pesach that will be the greatest Pesach ever. And it's in our hands. And Hashem sees that. I have no question that will allow us to march straight from Pesach. We say, "B'Nissan we were redeemed in the month of Nissan. We will be redeemed in the month of Nissan." Just like in the days when we left Egypt, God will show us miracles, miracles, miraculous cures, miraculous healing, miraculous in every possible way. And above all, the total miracle that we will be able to celebrate Pesach in the third temple and bring the Korban Pesach, not just metaphorically and figuratively, but in reality. And again, everyone should have healing. Matzah, when we eat matzah, the first night it says it's a bread of faith, and the second night is bread of healing. In Hayem Yem, a little booklet that Rebbe compiled from different sayings of his father-in-law Chassidus, he says that when a healing comes after faith, it's a very different type of healing than a healing that comes before faith. So the faith brings the healing because when you're connected to above, to Ani Hashem Refecho, God who's the healer, that brings the ultimate best possible healing in a way that as if we were never sick in the first place. So l'chaim, and we should only celebrate together, Kavod Yud Aleph Nissan, and celebrate the Geula Amitis Vashlem. L'chaim.
There's the one Farbrengen Rabbi Jacobson that the Rebbe said that it was a time of divine grace and mercy. People should chap rein and sing a nigun of Achel Lakim to bring down the Rachman. Let's chap rein and let's it's a time of Eis Ratzon. Let's sing a nigun.
Hiriya mama ya mama ya mama ya mama oh mama Hiriya mama ya mama ya mama ya mama oh mama Hoya Chalakim Doi Nafshi Manu Sikosi Hoya Suri Vishu Ovosi Ibis Gabe Layamai Ya Mama Yo Yinai Mama Yana Mama Yana Oh Yana Mama Oh Ya Chalakim Doi Mina Voshik Skam Sari Vishu Obasi Bibis Kami Layamai Yana Mama Ya Mama Oh
Thank you. Very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Chaim.
Thank you.
Chaim.
Chaim.
Share a story, a few stories, if I may. Some of you may know my father, Gershon Jacobson, his name Gershon Ber Jacobson. He's a journalist, a real journalist. And he had a very unique relationship with the Rebbe. I guess for various reasons, maybe because he was also a very globally thinking person, my father was. The Rebbe felt a certain, I guess, trust in him, that he had a big vision and thought out of the box. Whatever the reason, I'm not going to analyze it, but many hours and hours my father spent with the Rebbe. I think the longest yechidus ever, private audience, was when my father came back from Russia in 1971, which was very tough then. Brezhnev, it was right before they started letting Jews leave. But it was like a prison, a real prison, not letting anyone out. And my father came back, and the Rebbe had told him before he left that when you come back from Russia, make sure to call Rabbi Chadikov, the Rebbe's chief of staff, because the Russian Jews are so dear to me. Right away, you'll come in to see me right after you get back. So my father did that. He called Rabbi Chadikov. But to his surprise, it took 3 days before the Rebbe said, I'm not sure what night it was, maybe a Thursday night, I'm not sure. And the Rebbe said, come 11 o'clock, 9:30 will be my evening service. I have some work I will do. By 11 o'clock at night, you'll come and we'll spend time together. The time they spent was 11 o'clock till around 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll make it 7 hours. Maybe one of the longest, maybe the longest yechidus. I just want to share a few anecdotes, a few stories from that private audience. Again, remember the Russian Jews were literally in a prison for 70 years. They couldn't leave. They couldn't, it was horrible in that sense. I just read an article that in history, liquor stores and houses of worship could never, one of them had to be open if the other one was closed. And now it's possible they'll both be closed. And they write that in the Soviet Union, they kept the liquor stores open always as they closed the houses of worship, because that's how they kept communism alive. I just found it to be it was tragic, but also humorous. My father gets back from Russia, and he brings with him many letters that were written by the Russian Jews to the Rebbe, but because of danger, they couldn't write Dear Rebbe, so they wrote Dear Father, Dear Uncle, Dear Grandfather. So my father goes in 11 o'clock that night, punctually, and he has with him, the first thing he brings is a whole pile of letters of the Russian Jews. that he had brought out with him. And probably over 100, 150 letters. He had them like bundled up with a rope, and he put it on the Rebbe's table. The Rebbe began, he said, my father's told me, he picked it up, like almost like a baby, like it's a child, very gently, took out one or two letters and began to read. As he began to read, he started crying. The Rebbe started crying. And my father saw this was a very intimate moment. The Rebbe reading letters of essentially tortured souls from Russia writing to their Rebbe, to their father. So my father felt it was not his place. He started moving his way out of this room. He felt he'll go out. The Rebbe's ready. He'll come back in. As he's about to make his escape, the Rebbe motions to him to stay. So my father buried himself in the corner, and he said, I never saw such 5 to 10 minutes sobbing. The Rebbe read very slowly and very deliberately each letter. Rebbe was usually a fast reader, but here it was like, you could see, it was like cradling a child. Obviously, he didn't read all the letters. He read a few of them. That was the beginning of the Yechidus. That already set the tone. There were things that happened in that personal audience that are really quite amazing, and I think helpful even to our time now. So I'll share a few things besides what I just shared, which itself is a beautiful story. You talk about how a shepherd, the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, how did God know he's a leader? He says God tests his leaders with sheep. Both Moshe was a shepherd, Moses, and David was a shepherd. And the way they were sensitive to sheep, God realized that they'll be sensitive with my people. Famous story with the sheep, that he had a whole flock of sheep that he was tending to, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. And he suddenly noticed that one of the sheep disappeared. That already is a thing. How do you notice among thousands of sheep, one sheep? And he went to look for the sheep. And he found it a distance away, drinking from a brook of water. And he realized that the sheep was thirsty. He felt bad because he was not sensitive to that. He carried the sheep back on his shoulder to the flock. God said, if a man is so sensitive to just a single sheep, how sensitive will he be to my people? So it reminded me when the Rebbe reading those letters. So we know there's someone that cares, someone's thinking about you. So in that Yechidus, there was a lot of things that happened. I'll share. At one point, they talked a lot about Soviet Jewry, about the difficult challenges. And the Rebbe at one point smiled to my father. He says, you're a journalist. Journalists do interviews. So maybe you want to interview me. So my father said to the Rebbe, can I ask anything? And the Rebbe said, an interview? This is America here. There's no censorship. Of course you can ask it. So my father was not bashful. And he asked the Rebbe then, twice this happened. I'll tell both stories here because they're both very powerful. He asked the Rebbe, he said, people want to know why the Rebbe makes unilateral decisions. He doesn't consult with the committee, he doesn't make conferences, doesn't have a board. He makes decisions. So the people want to know why the Rebbe does not discuss it with others. The week was Parsha Shmos. This is the week that we read about the story of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. So the Rebbe says, it says in the verse this week that Moshe went out to see what's going on with his brother. Remember, he grew up in the privilege by Pharaoh. And he sees the Jews are suffering. And then he sees something. An Egyptian is striking a Jew. He was the master, he was the slave, and he was striking him. So disturbed Moshe Rabbeinu, he went over. He looked around. It says, Vayifa Moshe koi v'koi. Moshe turned here and there. Vayar ke'enish, and he didn't see anyone around. Vayaka samis, and he went and then struck him and killed the Egyptian for hitting the Jew, for torturing that Jew. And he buried him in the sand. So the Rebbe asked the question to my father, he's saying, why did Moshe look around? If you have to do what you have to do what you do. Who cares if someone's watching? Why is he afraid for himself? So Rashi, the Rebbe says, has that he looked whether anyone's going to come out of the Egyptian, but that's not pshat. That's more a deeper understanding. He was looked if there'd be any pedigree from this Egyptian that would be important. So he looked around, meant he looked into his future. And the Rebbe said it didn't help anyway looking around, because Dasan Aviram did see, and they went and informed on him, and he had to escape from Egypt because of this incident. And the Rebbe interpreted like this. He says the interpretation is very simple. A Jew is being struck by a wicked Egyptian. Moshe looked around to see, does anybody care? Is anybody crying out? Is anybody protesting? Moshe looked around. And what did he find? He found there's no one cares. There's no ish. There's no one around that's doing anything about it. So he did what he had to do. And he didn't wait for a committee. And he didn't make a conference call. And he didn't make a board meeting or establish a commission. He did what he had to do. That was the Rebbe's answer. Later, when my father left the Yechidus, the Bochum, the students were always hanging around. They wanted to know something. Tell us something the Rebbe said. So my father said, the Rebbe said, he's like Moshe Rabbeinu. That was my father's hergish feeling. Okay, but let's get back to the story. It's a tremendous story about leadership again. Now, obviously, if there are other people want to do the Rebbe, of course, we encourage them. But you don't wait. If you see something's happening, you got to act. A second story, it didn't happen then, but I'll already put it in the story. Another time the Rebbe asked my father the same question, interview. So my father asked the Rebbe, what bothers the Rebbe the most? It's a good Aleph Nissan story. What bothers the Rebbe? I told my father, it takes a little guts to ask the Rebbe that, what bothers the Rebbe the most? Like, so what's your business? What's bothering him? But he asked, and the Rebbe answered. He said, I'll answer with a story. The Rebbe gave an analogy. There was once a person who had all blessings, but then he suffered great losses. Like a story like Job, where there was a complaint. They said, yes, he's a God-fearing man. As long as his life is successful, he has money, he has a job, he has a family, he has his health. Take it away from him and you'll see what will happen. So God tested this man and he lost everything. He lost his money, he lost his family, he lost his health. The only thing he had left was his body. And then God sent a leprosy, a type of terrible itch all over his body. The Rebbe said the following. And finally, there was a compassion in heaven. There was Rahmanis. Have compassion on this person. He suffered so much. So there was a basko, there was a voice from heaven that said, make any one request, Acha Sha'alti. Make one request from God and we'll grant it to you. He could have asked for anything. But at that moment, the Rebbe said, he had a terrible scratch on his back. When you have a scratch on your back, you can think of nothing else. So he requested, he says, can you give me a back scratcher? This one request, give me a back scratcher. Because that moment, the Rebbe said, not a back, the Rebbe said, a sherbel, a shard. Like a sharp object that I can reach my back to scratch. He got his request. The Rebbe said, what bothers me most? People could ask for avonim tevis and margolius, for precious stones, for treasures. It does not just mean not just physically, but also spiritually. And they're asking for back scratchers. They're asking just to get their comfort, their little comfort. That's what bothered the Rebbe. I told my father, that's a schus that the Rebbe told you something like that. So I said to myself, you know what it really means? It means a real leader believes in you more than you believe in yourself. You think, all of us have, we have idealistic dreams. I can achieve this, I achieve that. But at the end of the day, we also have our own doubts and our questions. A Rebbe does not create a miracle in you. He sees who you really are. He sees what you're capable of. You see who you are, and he sees what you're capable of. And therefore he demands, not because he's just putting pressure on us and wants to just push, because that's what someone who loves you wants to do. They want to bring everything out of you. They don't want to just half. You see, wherever you go, the Rebbe's demand. Just a story comes to mind. Rabbi Moshe Hecht in New Haven. So he was a shliach back from the 40s. The Frierdiker Rebbe sent him to New Haven. He once wrote a note to the Rebbe. Hatzileni, save me. He had debts. There was arguments there. There was a bad scene. And he's asking the Rebbe, save me, send me someone to save the situation here in New Haven. I saw the answer, the Rebbe's handwriting. And the Rebbe's response is gewaldig. What does the Rebbe say to him? Torem yikro vani ena. Even before you called me to save you, I already answered. That's an expression. I already sent someone to save you, but apparently you don't recognize who he is. His name is Moshe Hecht. I forgot a second name. Moshe, what was his? Moshe, not Yak, Moshe, whatever. And I sent him already. And so maybe it's time you should get to know him and you'll have your Hatzalah. Now I remember reading it and I said to myself, the Rebbe's being cute. The Rebbe's like playing, we know that. Because that's what the Rebbe sees in a person. He sees that what are you asking for back scratchers? You're asking for immediate comforts. You're asking the Rebbe to have a headache. He'll tell you get an aspirin. That's what you need him for. Use him for something that to bring you to places you can never reach on your own, or you don't have the confidence to reach on your own. So I want to just end the Yechidus. The Yechidus, I said, went for hours. My father had a very good memory. He wrote it down. It's been published already, a lot of it. But the end is my favorite part. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, almost 6:15. They've been sitting talking for 7 hours almost. My father stood the whole time. The dawn began to break. So that you could see the light was starting to emerge from the window. When the Rebbe saw that, he stood up. So the end of the Yechidus, this was like it concluded. He stood up. My father said he was like fresh. You could not imagine there was the night passed. It's like fresh, like somebody just woke up. Completely fresh and energized. The Rebbe goes a step or two to the window and looks out there and says, a nayatog. A new day. The sun was rising. I mean, tell me, how much can we read into that perspective? By the Rebbe, another new morning was not just another morning. Every day the sun rises. It means even after a long night. And this was a Yechidus that talked about a lot of the darkness in the world, including the Soviet Union and other issues in Israel and other places. And that's how the Rebbe looked at life. A night, a new day, new opportunity. There's always the light will always come, even if it's a dark night. I mean, as I said, you can learn so much into it. It reminded me of a story that happened with me in London. Years ago, I was in London, England. And I spoke at a certain place and there was a Holocaust survivor there. And I told a story. I told this story, but I told another story. The Talmud says that after Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, so of course that changed the world. Came Shabbos, but Shabbos, the sun never set Friday night, that first Friday night. It says Lamed Vav Shah, 36 hours the light shined, because the divine light was so powerful that the sun never set. When did the sun begin setting? Saturday night. When Adam and Eve saw the sun setting, the Gemara says, the Talmud says, you know what happened? They began to tremble and dread, because they never saw a sunset. So they thought they were destroying the world, because the world was going shrouded in darkness. They thought their sin was destroying the world. They couldn't sleep. They were restless. So they prayed all night, did tshuva. And then you know what happened when the morning came? The sun started rising. They said, Elam kiminagene, it's not us that did it. That's how God created evening and morning, night and day. So some interpret that as, okay, you know what? There's a day that comes after the night, but you could also interpret it negatively. They didn't feel responsible anymore. Oh, it's dark. It's not because of us. So I told this story. That it also has a positive side, that even after a long darkness and long suffering, the sun rises. This man came over to me with tears in his eyes. He said, I don't know how you read my mind, but my experience in Auschwitz, Treblinka, I think it was. He says, I was a boy, a teenager. My whole family was taken, was killed. I remember nights we slept in the bunkers, on a bench, a wooden, it was so miserable. But sometimes we were so exhausted, I would sleep, I didn't even realize where I am. And I'd wake up sometimes and I see the sun shining through the window of the bunker, the camp. And I'd wake up and for a second I thought, oh, paradise, the sun is shining, I see a blue sky, I see the Carpathian Mountains, I may see a bird or two. And then 10 seconds later, I reminded myself, I'm in hell. And I got angry at the sun. I said, what nerve, what chutzpah do you have to shine when so many innocent people are being killed? At least protest one morning and don't rise and tell God to stop this. So, he said, it's hard to explain, but you get angry at nature itself because you have nowhere else to vent your anger. So nature became my enemy. Why are you so indifferent? The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, the sky is blue. It should be hell out there. Sun and the moon, everything should stop. And I got angry at nature itself. I couldn't look at the sun anymore. That's what he tells me. He says, I came out after the camps, we were liberated, miserable. I was suicidal. My whole family was gone. I ended up here in London. And every day was struggle. I did not want to live. Why did I survive? Now, sometimes I couldn't sleep at night. I'd fall asleep. And one morning, what do you know? The London sun shined through the window. And this time I was a free person. And I got hope. The sun this time said, no matter how dark it is, the sun also had a positive message for me. Yes, it was indifferent back then, but now the sun was telling me, I will always shine even after darkness. Exactly your story. And he said, share it with people. It reminded me when the Rebbe said, a new day. Meaning no matter what we go through, it's a new day, new opportunities. I think this is very apropos to our time as well. We always look for the light. You always look for the nobility in human beings, even when it's very dark. And trust me, we all know the Holocaust, every difficult time brings out either the worst in people or the best in people. I would like to believe that it's going to bring out the best in all of us, and already has. And, Alf Nissan, the Rebbe's birthday, only empowers us further to really see that light. Very soon we'll all be blessed and we'll see it in the fullest sense of the word. But let's not forget, we have, even though some people have been taken, we have our health. I hope all of you are well. I hope all of you are intact. We've had challenges here and we continue to have. But we cannot forget our blessings as well. There are many, many blessings. And again, we can cry out to God and ask, what are you doing here? Why is this happening? But it's not the why. And it's not what's going to be. It's going to be what we're going to do. I want to conclude with where I began. What are we going to do? That's the question. They tell that joke that the word got out that God is going to flood the whole world. So you can imagine every religion got together 2 weeks to prepare for the kingdom in heaven, to repent and so on. So the Christians got together. The Muslims got together. The Buddhists got together. Everybody got together to prepare for this end of our lives on this earth. And now what are we going to do to prepare for the next one? So this story was told actually by Theodore Bickel in Washington in honor of the Rebbe's birthday many years ago. He says that the Lubavitcher Rebbe got his people together. And you know what he told them? He said, listen, we have 2 weeks to learn how to live underwater. We're not going anywhere. We're not preparing for anything. They say why Lubavitchers don't have payas. There's long payas. The Breslover have long payas. So they say, that's the saying goes, that the Breslover Rebbe, Rab Nachman of Breslov, promised that if in case you end up in hell, in Gehenna, since you have payas, I'll schlep you out by your payas. What happens with Chabad? We don't have payas. There's nothing to schlep. There's nothing to hold on to. So they say the Rebbe stretches out his arm in hell, where you're in hell. So everybody thinks he's going to pull you out. He said, he gives you $1 and tells you Hatzlacha in your shlich is there. Gives you $1 and says, be successful in your mission. You're a shliach in hell. So be it. Sometimes we're in hell, sometimes we're in heaven. I'm not suggesting we have to choose going there, but we have a shlichus wherever we are. So if you think this is hell, so be it. That's what God decided. So here's your $1. Here's your shlichus, and be matzliach. You know, everybody's been chazering the story. I might as well say it. I mean, it's been going around about the story of Rabbi Elimelech and Rabbi Zusha Milizhensk, the two brothers, story in prison. You all know the story. I'll just say number 45, so everybody can laugh and we can move on. In case you don't know the story, it's a good story. There's different versions. Bottom line, they're in prison, and one of them is very depressed. And his brother says, "What are you depressed about?" He says, "It's weeks I can't make a bracha because in my cell there's a waste, that there's a toilet. And I'll call Allah, you're not allowed to make a blessing on food, on anything, in a bathroom." So his brother tells him, but the same God that told you to make a blessing when in another room tells you when it's in the bathroom, you don't make a blessing. So you're also fulfilling God's will. Oh, Rabbi Elimelech heard that. What did he think he did? He got up to dance. That's what a chassid does, celebrating that he's fulfilling God's mitzvah, not to make a blessing. Now, he didn't, when someone dances, especially in a prison, you don't just do it yourself. You get everybody else to dance. The whole place is now mayhem, uproar. Everybody's dancing. The anti-Semitic guard comes running and says to everybody, "What are you dancing?" Jews, non-Jews. The non-Jew says, "Is that Jew?" He says, "What? Why is he dancing?" They said, "We don't know, but it has something to do with the pail in his room." So the anti-Semite guard comes running in. What does he do? He says, "The pail? I'll show you, you dirty Jew." He takes the pail out of the cell, and that's that. And what do you think happens? Rabbi Zusha says, Rabbi Melech, whatever it happened. Now I can make a bracha. I can make a blessing. So wherever we are, we have to know that God wants us there. This is not man chosen. You didn't choose to be quarantined. Neither did I. None of us did. God wants us to that. It's just like he wanted the Jews to be quarantined that night before they were redeemed. So just let go. Let go. So it's not your plan. I had big plans myself. I was going to a Pesach program. I'm going to be with family, Gavaldik. I was going to be in Brazil last week. It was good, I had a whole thing. Israel a few weeks ago. You know what? It's not what God wants. Perfectly fine. We adjust. Get yourself out of the way. I always tell people when you go on a trip, even when one day we will go on trips again, always prepare for the spontaneous, for the things you didn't plan, because the greatest things happen when you get human plans out of the way. You never know the hashgacha. Why did God lead you to a certain place? You may think you went for your own reason, and the truth is another reason altogether. I'm always powerfully moved by the famous story of Chaim Rappaport. Baal Shem Tov sent him on a mission. It's a long story, but I want to conclude with this. I think it's something to keep in mind. Chaim Rappaport, okay. Comes back from the mission. Baal Shem Tov is interested in knowing, how did you travel? How did you get there? Seems like a trivial. Who really cares? Mission accomplished. What difference is it? Baal Shem Tov insists, and Chaim tells him, I traveled, I stayed in an inn. Second night, there was no inn. I stayed by the side of a road. In the morning, I woke up. I camped out. In the morning, I woke up. I washed my hands, said my prayers. And then I sat down to eat something. There was a brook of water waiting there. And I made a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shehakol b'dvarei. I drank the water. Baal Shem Tov jumps up. Excitement. What? Says that brook of water was waiting from the beginning of time, from the beginning of creation, for you to come there and make a blessing on this water. I've traveled many places in this world. I think I've been to places where probably another Jew wasn't there yet. But even if yes, I always say to myself, why am I here? Maybe I'm here to make a blessing, to do a mitzvah, to do a good deed, that the entire creation is waiting for me to do. Imagine we had that attitude in life. I remember people telling me, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. Life is monotonous. And I always tell the story. I said, what do you mean monotonous? Every second is an opportunity. Now, can we live with such cognizance of total awareness? The Rebbe lived like that, but we can a little, even a few times a day. Right now, this is where Hashem led us. And the entire creation is waiting to see how we're going to behave. That's the mindset. And that's the Chassidish mindset. That's the concept of Hashgacha Pratis. Hashem mitzad digover kenanu. Yes, our footsteps are led. We don't need them. We thought we did. A few weeks ago, we were all making our plans. I thought I was going to take my feet where I want to go. You know what? It's not exactly like that. So we can either fight it and just be angry, or we can, I don't like the word, people don't like surrender, but let's call it surrender in a good way. This is what God wants. Not just make the best of it. This is why creation is waiting for you to see what you're going to do. How are you going to behave? Now, I know a lot of people don't like, it's too responsive. I'd like to just be leave me alone. Well, you know what? We're not left alone. We're now, all our lives are disrupted. Let's be blunt about it. Whether you're a layperson, whether you're a rabbi, hundreds of rabbis, we have Rabbi Levin here. It's your whole life, and it's your passion to see your people in a shul, a Seder, Pesach. But the answer is very straight. That's not what God wants, and that's it. The same God that wanted a few months ago, last year, 2 years ago, we should be together, public zdarim and all that, doesn't want it this year. Not I think there's a certain calm and peace when you recognize that. It's not our choice. If you feel you made a mistake and I could correct it, so go correct it. This is not up to us. I find it to be a peaceful place in a sense. It's not peaceful because I want everyone to be healthy. But you know what? God has his plan. Friedrich Rebbe said it. God chose him to send him to America. Didn't want to go. Do you know how many things happened in history we didn't want? Do you think Yaakov wanted to go to Egypt? That's what God wanted. Joseph wanted to go to Egypt. And then great things happen. But we have to be part of it. We can't resist. Like I said, the swimmer. This is the waters we have to swim now. And I assure you, and I say to myself, to all of us, it's not an accident all this happened. Purim, Pesach, Yud Aleph Nissan. It's interesting days this should happen. And you could make a big say, why would it happen in such celebratory days, days of redemption, days of healing? I just saw a note from the Rebbe. Someone writes to the Rebbe, a woman writes that she's in a bad mood. So the Rebbe says, a bad mood in the month of Nissan? The month of Nissan that redeems us from anything negative. So you could come and say, complain. Hey, it's the wrong time. If this happened around Tisha B'Av, I'd understand. Why is it happening around Yud Aleph Nissan? We need this. But again, God has his interesting, mysterious plans. It doesn't make a difference. You look at the other way around. Maybe he wants to give us a Yud Aleph Nissan and a Pesach, Magdim Refuah L'Makot, to give us the healing before the illness, to give us the strength to get through this and to become greater people. I think we can all look at ourselves and say, today's the Rebbe's birthday. I'm the Rebbe's man, the Rebbe's woman. I'm a child, I'm a soldier. And what is expected of me? Instead of asking, what do I need? What am I needed for? At the same time, being prudent and healthy for ourselves and others, what am I needed for? I'm telling you, there are millions of people, literally those numbers, that are very desperate in many different ways. Any one of us that has presence of mind, composure, it's like a no-brainer. Last year, you call somebody 2 days before Pesach, have a happy Pesach. Okay, it's a nice line. Now you can call them and say, the days of freedom are coming. What can I do to help alleviate a little of your challenges? Let's talk together. Let's Farbrengen together. It really is significant. It's sad that it has to come this way, but we can celebrate Pesach and it's really meaningful. It's like a freedom. Last year, freedom, what's the freedom? We're already free. We have all our gadgets. You could travel wherever you like. What did Pesach really add to freedom? For Pesach and for the people that finished with the Holocaust was a redemption. Well, what the redemption was there last year exactly? Now what? What were we redeemed from? We're comfortable. And this year, we're not so comfortable. This year, there's a real Mitzrayim to deal with. So the Chaim, Farbrengen can go on and on. I'm 3 hours ahead of you. So I'm already, I could say in a few hours that a new day has begun. Your night is yet young, but it's Yud Aleph Nissan on the world. God sent us a gift 118 years ago. The gift lives on. The Rebbe gave us strengths, directives, his teachings. A Rebbe lives on through his teachings. So I think just a practical suggestion today, Nissan is ending already, but it doesn't hurt today, tomorrow, to learn something from the Rebbe. I shared some thoughts to say, of course, the kapitel, the Rebbe's new chapter 119, and to add a little stuck in honor. That's what the Rebbe wanted. And these things actually all have the power to avert and to abolish decrees. Like we say, tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, mavirnas reis agzera. They eliminate gzeras. But we should only be doing good things without having to eliminate. It should only be for the good and for the better. And there's no question Hashem is watching over us. And our Rebbe is watching. So we have to think positive, do what we have to do technically and from a health point of view. But like the Rebbe always says, physically, you do what the doctors say. But mentally and spiritually, you do what the Torah says. Think good, think positive. So l'chaim to you all. I want to thank Rabbi Levin for facilitating this. We never end the Farbrengen. We say, as the Rebbe says, we take a little break between one Farbrengen and the next. So it's one long Farbrengen. I want to wish everybody, a very kosher Freilich and Pesach in unprecedented ways. To truly be a real redemption in every possible way. And as I said, I'm here at your service, giving out kinds of materials. Feel free to use it. Feel free to use other materials. There's a lot of good stuff out there. But don't just sit on the sidelines. You must do something today, tomorrow. You have to say, what am I doing to bring Mashiach a little closer, to be a little kinder, a little gentler, another mitzvah, another learning, another tzedakah. We must increase in light when the darkness is there. L'chaim to you all, and we'll be zeichet to the Geula Pratis and Geula Klaus, the personal and global redemption. L'chaim, everyone.
Chaim Baruch Jacobson. Jacobson, I didn't tell you before the Farbrengen began. I wrote a letter to Rebbe, asked for bracha for Farbrengen. Opened up the Rebbe's letters, and actually the theme of the Farbrengen that you were talking about is the theme of this letter. And if you're familiar with this letter, it's in Igros Kodesh Chelik Ches, letter Beis Shinayim Beis, letter to a woman who lost her job. Rebbe writes to her, she writes that she had a job and she now has no job. Rebbe writes, I'm paraphrasing from the Hebrew, that a human being's life doesn't always go in a straight path. And since a person always wants to become better, to rise, to go higher, that itself leaves a possibility to descend as well. And don't be affected, or don't feel bad, chas v'shalom, when you see there's a descent. Especially if the descent is only the Gashmias. And especially when it's not dependent on you. On the contrary, the Yerida, the descent, should cause in you an additional inspiration for Emunah and B'tachin, in a deeper way, Yeser Pnimim, Yeser Amukim, more within yourself, deeper strength within yourself, and to reveal those inner strength, it takes courage, emetz ruach, courage of spirit, not to be affected, not to be spoiled, not to be impressed by a unpleasant experience, especially because it's just for a very short time. Speaking of a practical thing to take away tonight, I just want to conclude with this. There was a young man who told the Rebbe he wants to do something really special. And he has a lot of money. He wants to do something really special. What should he do? The Rebbe told him he should use the money that he wants to invest to buy matzahs for people for Pesach. This guy had something which he thought was far more important. He told the Rebbe, I wanted something big. The Rebbe said, by me, I consider big getting matzahs to people for Pesach. So I think one practical thing we could do, I have plenty of matzah. No one needs matzah. If you know someone who needs matzah, that'd be just a practical thing to bring matzah to someone who doesn't have it, and add in Torah to him. Stuck as Jacobson said, say one more l'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim bracha. We should be with our Rebbe, take from mamish, go mitzvah shlema, l'chaim.
L'chaim, and again, a bracha to everybody. It's a real honor and pleasure to be with you. I'm sure this is recorded, right? This will be available, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's great. So it's a perpetual Farbrengen. And if anybody wants to be, needs anything from me, you want to see the steps that I created for the Seder or any other material, just go to meaningfullife.com, our website, meaningfullife.com. and it's all, the links are all there. And again, I'm very, what can I say? We are all in it. We are one soul. We're all part of one organism, even whether we're separated physically. Never forget that. So therefore, we all need each other, and we all strengthen each other. L'chaim, Rabbi Moshe. We should only be zeichet to host great things and to use this time to build greater and bigger than ever.
No back scratching.
No back scratching. That's exactly right.
Chaim.
Chaim.
Nachem Menlo, it's another niggin.
Yeah, we love a niggin. He sings beautifully.
Rebbe was energy. 70 people thinking about taking it easy. So the Rebbe said, now we want to start in Dublin. My shver was Nechidus. I think it was the time of the 70th birthday, actually. Not long afterwards. And my shver was saying that he was thinking towards retirement. So the Rebbe stopped and said, I'm very sorry, Mr. Weingarten, but I don't understand that word. It's not in my vocabulary.
Die Kene sagt Minda Gisrol Teirohu. Und die Frage steht sich auf dem Bure, was die Käse geschrieben schon. Und dort der Pirush Kipschute, in der Rentfer, was mit auf der noch tun, da steht gleich nur der Ruf im Posik, wie ihm begrüßt. Wie dort der Molter darf man noch im Ton, wie es Gabrus ist sehen.
We're still here. What's going on?
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Lev Yitzchak Shul, Rabbi Reichik for sponsoring Farbrengen. Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson, for inspiring us. And and
everyone should be well and healthy, and our refuah kreva v'shlema to everybody that needs it. Real pleasure. Be well.
Yeah,